Secret Societies of America's Elite. From Knights Templar to Skull and Bones. By Stephen Sora. Contents Acknowledgement Introduction. Born in Blood 1 Part 1 Piracy. A Merry and a Short Life 9 Chapter 1 The New World Order 12 Chapter 2 Brothers to Pirates and Corsairs 32 Chapter 3 Under a Black Flag 48 Chapter 4 Skeletons in the Closet 68 Part 2 The Lodge and the Revolution 91 Chapter 5 Smugglers, Patriots, and Masons 100 Chapter 6 Franklin and the Masonic Underground 122 Chapter 7 The Merchants of War 136 Chapter 8 The Bribe that won the war 153 Chapter 9 One Nation Under the Great Architect 169 Part 3 From the Sacred to the Profane 111 Chapter 10 The Slave Traders 179 Chapter 11 Red Cross and Black Cargo 188 Chapter 12 Master Masons and their slaves 206 Chapter 13 The Masonic Betrayal 228 Chapter 14 The Opium Brotherhood 238 Chapter 15 Opium From the Lodge to the Den 259 Chapter 16 Wealth The Legacy of the Opium Trade 276 Chapter 17 The Power of the New Skull and Bones 219 Notes 305 Index 317 Introduction Born in Blood Elite and secret societies have shaped history since the beginning of civilization. From the time of the Crusades to the 21st century, a handful of families have controlled the course of world events and have built their own status and wealth through collective efforts and intermarriage. The greatest elite society was that of the Knights Templar. Admission to the organization often required breeding and wealth that were the privilege of a select few. Outside the core a larger force was needed both to fight wars and to maintain the organization's far-flung assets. These forces would grow to include an army, a navy, various real estate, including agricultural properties, and a banking empire. Admission standards changed over time to the degree necessary to maintain the needed personnel, but the elite corps was always in control. When the massive Templar organization was suddenly outlawed by the avarice of the French king, it did not die, it simply moved underground. The survival of the underground Templars has been touched upon by several authors, but only recently has more in-depth research brought the Templars' survival to light. The Templars survived militarily. By pledging themselves to various powers, the military orders survived their open attack by both state and church and the mass executions and imprisonments of the 14th century. The Knights of Christ, the Teutonic Knights, the Swiss Guard, and the Scots Guard, as well as several small but powerful military orders, outlived those who persecuted them. Hydra-like, the order's introduction survived, prospered, and multiplied. Several are alive, and well in the new millennium. The Templar organization survived and regrouped financially. The massive Templar, Incorporated that would bring banking to its modern form survived by moving to Switzerland, where a handful of bankers maintained, and often controlled massive wealth of the European elite. The Swiss cantons, often flying flags only slightly different from the Templar flags, protected by the Alpine passes and the Swiss Guard, took the role of the Templar preceptory. The neutral status and the preservation of secrecy would attract the funds of Europe from the 14th century to the 21st. The Templar ideal of commitment to learning, discovery, and brotherhood greatly affected the world over the subsequent centuries. For example, Neo-Templar organizations were responsible for advances in various sciences. Prince Henry, the Grand Master of the Knights of Christ, made advancements in the art of navigation and funded the voyages of discovery. And various members of the Royal Society progressed in astronomy, in medical arts, and even in the transmutation of metals, and their accomplishments frequently became the foundation of modern sciences. Until the early 1300s, learning and experimentation were considered heretical and could easily place a scientist under the control of the Inquisition. Later post-Templar organizations understood the value of secrecy to avoid religious persecution for philosophical and scientific discussion. The Masonic Brotherhood created in post-Templar Scotland was largely responsible for influencing the American concepts of liberty, freedom, due process, and democracy. The concept of the military lodge, in which a non-permanent lodge traveled with soldiers brought to America by the fighting units of Europe, would further the ideals and fight the war for independence. Secretive groups such as those meeting at St. Andrew's Lodge in Boston would instigate the Boston Tea Party, and they spread like wildfire throughout the colonies. The Quakers Clump, the Loyal Nine, and the Sons of Liberty would grow into the Committees of Correspondence, the Continental Congress, Introduction, and finally Fighting Militia Units. Many were necessarily organized in secret. Many would preserve their secrecy by oaths taken in Masonic fraternal lodges. The climax was when French forces, enlisted through Masonic channels, arrived under the command of high-ranking Masons and Knights of St. John, and defeated the British at Yorktown. The result was an elected American president who was a Mason, sworn in on the Bible of a Masonic lodge by the Grand Master of New York's Masons, and new form of government. Another was the nation's capital, which was built by employing Masonic geometric principles, and was dedicated in a strictly Masonic ceremony complete with high-ranking government members in Masonic aprons. But there was a downside. Secret societies and the elite of mainstream society would strive to perpetuate themselves through any means possible. The higher ideals of liberty and equality were compromised by the elite, who remained in control. The breakup of the Templars was directly responsible for the dramatic rise in piracy that plagued Europe, America, and even the Indian Ocean. The pirates themselves were organized in fraternal brotherhoods. They pledged themselves to the good of the group, they promised to share equally in the proceeds, and they even fought under the same battle flag that was flown by the Templar fighting fleet. Stranger still, the pirate bases ports in Scotland, Ireland, and America where pirates could openly dock and sell their booty were protected by Masonic cells that extended to the courthouses and capitol buildings. Smuggling, too, grew as a worldwide enterprise despite its illegality. Ports from Salem and Newport to the Caribbean and Bermuda, which harbored and facilitated the trade of pirates, had no qualms about aiding and abetting smugglers. For the same reasons that Masonic organizations grew into labor and artisan guilds that protected the livelihood of their members, individuals in the smuggling business needed to be considered trustworthy. In Bermuda, where possibly two-thirds of the 18th century trade was illegal, trading partners had to maintain secrecy. The island was and is a bastion of Masonry. The Introduction Customs House itself more closely resembles a Masonic temple than a government office. Unfortunately, the slave trading industry was also furthered by Masonic groups. The Knights of Christ were actually responsible for organizing the importation of human cargo to Europe, and later for licensing the trade in the Americas.